So market research is crucial. And at the moment, I've seen what you do now and it's phenomenal. It's a massive, massive toolkit for anyone in industrial design or in product development in any scope. So I'd highly recommend anyone in this field to get in contact with Trevor and look at his AI tools and looking into validating the market need.
Many founders bring raw, unshaped ideas to the table, but turning those early sparks into viable, manufacturable products requires a different discipline. That is, inventive thinking layered with industrial design expertise. Our guest, Scot Farley, straddles both worlds, inventor and designer. In this episode, we unpack how invention differs from design, how to identify real opportunities, and how to ensure products can be made, protected, and scaled. Don't forget to subscribe and stick around, because if you have an idea for an innovative physical product, you will gain valuable insights from an expert who lives in this world. My name is Trevor Holmes, your host. Let's go. Scot, welcome.
Hey, Trevor. Thanks for having me on. It's always lovely to get on a show with an expert like yourself and share a bit of my knowledge about a field that I'm very passionate about and enjoy sharing with others who may not have seen how it all works.
Excellent. You flatter me, Scot. But we're really interested in the knowledge that you have. So I'm going to kick off with, tell us a little bit about yourself, and in particularly, how did you become both an inventor and an industrial designer?
Okay. So from a very young age, I was always inventive. My dad was quite entrepreneurial and my mum, he was an engineer and my mum was an artist. So I actually got this blend of pragmatic thought and artistic thought, which was lucky. We also grew up on a farm. So I think, Australians and New Zealanders, we're very lucky that we have this multidisciplined background where we're fairly well educated. We've got lots of variation in what we do. Our jobs aren't very specific. We just do lots of different things. Like a Sparky here would do every part of electrical work in a house, but in England, you might just do GPOs. And being on a farm,
Yes.
you have to sort of make things work. And also being remote, in Australia and New Zealand, you have to be remote. You're being remote, you have to make things work. And it gives us a really lovely opportunity as on this part of the world to be really quite good inventors. And we've done a lot of good invention over the years. And I'm lucky enough to
we have.
born an inventor, and it's a blessing and a curse sometimes. It keeps you up at night, but it's nice to be able to make big changes in the world just as an individual, it's a lovely thing to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great background, Scot. So let's move into that. What is the difference between inventing and designing in your eyes?
Well, there's a lot more energy in inventing. I was born an inventor, and you spend your whole time just churning ideas over in your head. You look at a problem, anything in life, and I have to actually stop myself because I look at something and go, God, that's really clumsy, that solution. And if I start
that needs fixing.
If I start down that rabbit hole, it's the energy required is ridiculous. So, as an inventor, I do a lot of inventive stuff. I talk to attorneys, and when they can't write something up as an invention, which means it's pretty much just an idea. Someone has a problem, they've sort of isolated the problem, but they don't have a solution for it. They can't draw it up and outline a solution for it. So that's an invention. If you can do an innovative or unique and inventive solution to something, that's an invention. And that differs from industrial design, because industrial design is more about taking an invention and making it marketable and manufacturable. There's lots of areas about marketable, which means ergonomic safety, all that sort of stuff that makes it actually a product that someone would want to buy at a fixed price. But invention's all about the new. It's all about it generally comes from your imagination, whereas my industrial design stuff comes from knowledge. I've learned industrial design by doing what I do over 30 years. I've just learned about materials. I've learned about safety standards. I've learned about all these things. And you apply all those things in different hats and all the rest of it to make something marketable and manufacturable. But in my time of product development, we've probably, in hundreds of projects that I've looked at, I've only met 10 inventors. And it's someone who's come to me with an actual
Yeah,
solution.
really.
It may not look anything like what I go to market with for them, but it's something that solves the problem in a physical way or even a drawing. And everyone else
Yeah.
that comes to me is just basically has an idea and they've isolated a problem. And so the invention's
Well,
the
that
solution to that problem.
thanks for that explanation. That's a real good clarity between the difference of inventing and solving a problem, but then designing it to actually be manufacturable.
Yeah.
So that's great, Scott.
Yep.
You describe mental experimentation as a core part of your process. What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, so I guess inventors are very visual people. They've got a very powerful imagination. And I sort of see it in writers as well. Writers have this ability to, map out a whole storyline. And reading Game of Thrones, it really, blew my mind at how much information someone can store in their brain and coherently put down on paper and keep track of all the
That's a
plots,
nice
places, and
analogy.
everything. Yeah. And I guess inventors are the same. We have an ability to sort of see things as they are, um, very astute, and we look around. We don't miss a thing. Like we're very detailed people. We see how things interact. We see how things work, cause and effect a lot, and we store that on our brains. And with invention, it's like a reverse explosion. You've got to take all that information and bring it down and narrow it down and analyze it in your brain, run it through, and then eventually some things will just sort of rise to the top as a good solution that solves all the problems. So the good thing about being an industrial designer as well as an inventor is that you have all the other hats on as well. Like you have the safety, the tooling, all this
Yeah,
thing that allows you to sort of put all the right ingredients into your criteria that gives you a result that can be produced and the market will want. So invention's about sort of just or mental evaluation or mental analysis is just about running through these ideas in your mind, which is far quicker. You can run through 100 ideas in your mind, see how they fit to the plan, see how they fit to the requirements of the project, and if they don't, discard them. Whereas I mean, at university, I was always told off because I didn't have this big project book which had every step of the way drawn up.
yeah,
And my argument was,
yeah,
if I draw it every time, it's going to take me so long to do, get through all these ideas that I'll never get the result. So I would go through and
yeah.
my initial concept would just appear on the page and they go, where'd this come from? Where's all the working towards this? I said, it all up here. It all happened in my brain. So I'm able to really analyze how things work and then sort of put it into a final product for the value.
Terrific. That's so interesting, and I don't know how your mind works, Scott, but obviously it's unique. So that's a good lead into or segue into, how do you actually balance that creativity with the constraints of like cost, ergonomics, aesthetics, and manufacturing?
Yeah, well, see, the way I do it is I really have that criteria mapped out before I start the project. So you can't. There's no point in doing these projects unless they're going to be viable and commercially practical. So initially, before you start the project, you map out what the market wants, what the problem is, and you put down the criteria of what you're trying to achieve. That all just goes. I memorize that, and it goes into my mind, and then I let my subconscious take over, and basically, if it's going down a path that doesn't make any sense financially, it won't work. So if it doesn't go, it's going down a
Yeah,
path that
yeah,
won't be tolerable. It won't work. If the ergonomics are wrong, I'll discard it. So it's sort of a self-regulating thing. Your mind's just not set free just to come up with any solution. It has to be sort of guided
yeah.
in variables that can't be moved and variables that can be moved.
And so does that the difference of going from, that creativity and then combining all those elements that you intuitively know because you've learnt them and all that, and therefore you can apply them and filter out all those other ideas that just don't meet those criteria?
Absolutely. The process of elimination is taking that reverse explosion, just whittling it down to actually what works. And there's different sizes, there's different aspects to it. Like you can do that in your mind, and then you still then have to go to paper. So you start drawing it, and you'll
Yep.
use a different part of your brain, and you'll realize, hey, this is not working for another reason. So you go back to the drawing board in your mind, and you start reevaluating that existing design, or you go to a new one. So you have to be very critical at every stage.
That's really amazing. I guess there's just so many iterations of you going backwards and forwards and so on.
Absolutely.
So that's a good to understand because I guess my next question is, how do you actually know when it's time to move from that ideation process into actually prototyping?
I guess the first part of ideation is my personal evaluation. So I'm doing that all in my head. The client doesn't know anything about it. I might ask them a few questions here and there, or go to research to find out whether I'm on track with something. But eventually, I have to start putting
Yeah.
these things down on paper, and so I start drawing them up as a hand drawn concepts. And I usually have two stages to that initial concepts, which is just a number of different ways of solving the problem in viable manners, and then you go either go to the market or go to the client, and we'll evaluate which one of those concepts is working. And then once we figure out
Okay.
which is working, we refine that right back down to a final concept, which is where basically we've uncovered all the needs, and we've ticked all the boxes. This thing's actually working. This is the right way to take the
Yeah.
project. And once we've done that, it's time to stop designing and start engineering. So we just call that a design freeze. If everyone and every
Yes.
stakeholder is happy with all the requirements being met in the project, and we can see this actually working as a final product on the market, then we call it a design freeze, and we go to the engineering phase, which is the CAD and the prototyping and the testing and the manufacturing parts of things.
Brilliant. So, can you give us an example of a project where, the inventive step was really critical?
Yeah, so one of the projects which the inventor step was really crucial was a project where you needed to protect the internal organs in laparoscopic surgery. The project was called EndoGuard, and the idea was that a blanket was to cover the vital organs while the surgeons would work laparoscopically on the damaged tissue in hysterectomies and all that sort of thing. So
Wow.
the crucial part of this was the blanket had to be quite big, bigger than your hand span, so it covered enough organs to be useful. But it had to also pass through a trocar, which is only 12 mil hole. The trocar is what goes into the belly, and it gets pumped full of air, and all the instruments go through that. And there's only 12 mil diameter. And so this whole blanket had to somehow get inside there. It had to be electrically insulated, had to be thermally insulated,
Yeah.
had to have a physical barrier so that any sharp implements wouldn't cut through the tissues. A really great project. I was really passionate about it. Look, I'd love to be able to save lives here. La la la. Let's go ahead. We had two
Yeah, yeah.
amazingly talented laparoscopic surgeons who were they were gynecologists, so they're both very skilled, very well respected in their field. And I was
Yeah,
right
yeah.
behind this project, but it got to a stage where I'd exhausted all my knowledge on how to do this.
So what surprised you or forced you to pivot in that project?
Yeah, we got to a point where I just couldn't get this large blanket through this 12 mil hole, and I'd exhausted all of my knowledge about materials. We'd used foaming silicons, we'd used all sorts of things, and I just could not get this to work. A funny story was at one point I was so desperate I'd had this idea to try and force this thing through a funnel and into the applicator. And so I was at the shopping centre,
Yeah.
and I picked up a tub of Vaseline, a pack of condoms, and a funnel, and I was at the checkout, racing through to get back to the office to solve all these things. And I noticed this lady beside me was looking at me. I looked up and I thought, "What are you looking at?" And then I looked back at my basket of goodies. I thought, "Oh no,
Yeah.
what is she thinking?" But but anyway,
He didn't
yeah,
know you were an inventor and an industrial designer.
yeah, it would have. I don't know what was going through her mind, but it would have been. She would have been intrigued. But anyway, that didn't work
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
So it meant I had to pivot, and I had to go back to the client and say, "Look, I'm stuck. I can't really use all my knowledge is gone. I need to go back to invention." So it ended up I took another 5 months to solve it, which was not all paperwork. It was a
Wow.
lot of thinking and a lot of just re-looking at the problem and trying to figure things
Yeah.
out. And it ended up in the end it was the crucial part of the patent in the end, because it ended up being a patent in the material. So I was using a 0.5 millimeter silicon
Really?
blanket, and in that blanket I put a dimple top and bottom, which essentially made that a 1.5 millimeter blanket, but it wasn't, as it was still only 1.5 millimeters, which means I could roll it right up get it into the
Yes.
applicator, and then put it through the trocar. So, but that was, it was just pure invention, just gathering information
Yeah,
that didn't
yeah.
exist before and just applying it in a way that worked. And that's where invention is different. It came from imagination, not knowledge. And so I guess that really reinforces the inventive step. But without that pivot, that
Ab-
project wouldn't work. Couldn't have gone through.
Yeah, that is absolutely fascinating, Scott. So, have you ever been in a situation where you've advised a client not to proceed? And what were the red flags for you?
Yeah, I had to be careful here because I early in my halfway through my career, I guess a client came to me with a product which I didn't think would work, and it ended up being immensely successful. Actually, I've got it right here beside me, but it was stiletto's heel cover, and that's probably one of the least technical projects I've ever done. But it's a heel cover for stilettos. You think, oh well, how are you going to sell that? And the client came to me. He was an investment banker, and and um,
Yes.
and the wife was looking for something to do, and they had this idea, and it was you know it was a good idea. They came to me with a few beads, a table stopper, and some elastic band holding it all together, and said, "This is what we want to do." And they actually were inventors. They actually had invented the solution, but it was just, oh my god, how are you going to sell enough of these to make money? And I advised, it's a high risk project. Anyway, we came up with a solution which was really quite unique, and it sold millions and millions of these things. And obviously,
That
she was a very good marketer, and she just killed it. But I advised
yeah,
again, so
yeah,
I got to be
yeah.
very careful. But another one that comes to mind was a mining product, which is probably the two extremes of what I do, and it was for
Yes.
exploration mining for minerals. And previously, what they used to do was they'd have a big rig and they'd be underground and they'd be drilling for a day or so into the ground based on two markers that the surveyors had set up front and back of the cave. And they lined it up with a tape
Yes.
measure and a string line. You can imagine it's a $5 exercise, but a lot of cost
Yeah.
involved in having operators underground and the machine running for a day if it's not right. And so the
Of
surveyors
course.
would go down, put the markers in place, and then operator would come along and line it up. And it's massive areas of error, of course. And so you go for a day and then you find out in the wrong direction. So the client came to me. He was an operator and lovely guy. And he had this idea to put a laser on the side of the machines just to get the alignment right. So the laser pointed on the back marker and the front marker, so you knew that the rig
Yes.
was in the right direction. And I looked at his project and I said, at the very most, we could charge $500 for this product, and there's not that many drill rigs out there. There's no business here, so I had to advise that
Ah,
we had to pivot. And that project ended up being, once we isolated what the real problem was having people underground and the inaccuracies, the guidance of it. And
yes.
it ended up being a $150,000 unit that was self-guided. And now those units all around the world are self-guided. It changed the industry,
Yeah.
and they don't need surveys underground. The surveyor can set the guidance from above ground, and then the operator can just
Yes.
line it up. It ended up being an estimated $400 million industry, and it probably makes
Yeah.
Australia, so much more because it's of the opportunity of gained new minerals they found. It was brilliant,
Yeah.
but it wasn't a business before
Okay.
that, so we had to pivot.
And pivoting is necessary sometimes when we're actually learning through the process and the research and understanding the market.
Yeah,
So that's a great example.
yeah.
Scott, what do you see are the most common mistakes that founders make in the early product design?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I see as far as like running out of misuse of resources is patenting too early, and I'm a massive fan of patents. I use it, you know, a lot, and anything new to world, anything worth patenting should be patented. It's part of the sales of your product. It's part of the value.
But it's a matter of when.
So a lot of people will have an idea and try and patent that. They can't patent an idea until they can sort of draw it up and there's a solution. So they can't do
Yes.
it then. But if they have a very basic solution that's not really marketable and not really a bit clumsy or whatever, they go and patent that, and it doesn't become very much worth because by the time I look at it and turn it into a marketable and manufacturable product, which is refined, and if you get a market with a clumsy product, you're pretty much just allowing the market to know the solution. They see your clumsy product, and they go, well, I can do that in a much better way. It'll be much cheaper on the market and
Yeah.
much more efficient. And they'll just take 80% of your market share straight away once they release. So it's very important to refine your
Yes.
product down and be very careful about what goes to market. And so if you patent something that's really not at that level, then it just becomes uh, un, I guess not really, you can't really defend it in court because it doesn't really relate to the product you actually go to market with. So you spend all your money on patents and then you get tied into a patent which you can't really change, especially if you go to a full patent and it's not a provisional stage, which you can change. Then you're sort of locked into this cover that forces you to design in a way that's really not the right solution. So that's a big mistake.
That's a really good point. That's a really strong point to make, Scott.
I mean, I'm not an attorney, but
So,
I don't patent things until I've got a working prototype.
key point for our viewers to understand
Yeah.
that big lesson there that you've just shared.
And you can use a provisional to protect yourself to a degree, but don't rely too much on it. Don't go to a full standard patent until you have this solution that works and is market ready.
So, at what stage should founders actually involve someone like you?
Okay, so if you have just an idea, then you pretty much have to get someone like me involved early because just an idea can't be patented. It's not really a solution. So you have an idea, you pretty much isolated a problem. Um,
Yes.
like with this underground rig, he isolated there's an issue, with this thing, but he didn't have a real solution that was ready to go. So he needed to get me involved to get to a point where it's a solution worth pursuing. If you're an inventor
Yeah.
and you have a proof of concept, then develop and you should do your own work to develop the proof of concept before getting me involved because it'll save you a lot of money with me inventing for you because it takes a lot of time and energy. So if you
Yes.
can invent a proof of principle, even if it's basic, like some of the stuff I come up with in my workshop is so basic, and I never show the client because like, oh, how did you, it's just so rudimentary, but it just proves in my mind it can be done. So get me that,
Yes.
and then I can just take that and just make it marketable and manufacturable, and you'll be so far ahead.
Yes. But as you said earlier on, Scott, the actual number of real inventors out there are very few. So when
Yeah,
people have ideas about, solving a particular problem, but not the skill or innate ability to actually invent, they should come to you pretty early. So that's a great one to get a message through to the people out there.
yeah.
So how much does market research, product market fit, and validation of the market influence the inventive design?
Ah, so deeply. I mean, it's a first stage. You have to research the market. You have to find out what the market wants and needs are. And if you miss that point, you're on the wrong track from day one. So, obviously the process of,
Yeah.
of ideation and then validating it through concepts and things, and then taking that to market and testing it, that's really the first step. And, get it wrong, fail early, but don't go forward with a concept that's not going to be acceptable by the market. So we have a stage gate process, and we're very critical at each stage. So if we're off base, we just go back to the ideation project and try and get online again. Um,
Yeah.
so market research is crucial. And at the moment, I've seen what you do now, and it's phenomenal. It's a massive, massive toolkit for anyone in industrial design or in product development in any scope. So I'd highly recommend anyone in this field to get in contact with Trevor and look at his AI tools and looking into validating the market needs. And because a lot of it's gut feeling, to be honest, I go out there and I just try and immerse myself in the market, become the user, and it's all intuition and gut feeling for me. So I'm very lucky. I seem to have got it right most times, but it's still it's still much better to use your process and further evaluate it because concept is king. If you're off base on the concept, you'll take that concept all the way through. All the costs of developing a product will be built on sand. So that first part of research
Well,
and is gold.
thanks for that plug, Scott. I might put that right at the very front.
Yeah, well,
So
I've
appreciate
seen
you
it, and
validating
proof of the
what we do.
proof's in the pudding. So, um,
Yes.
it's really really valuable.
So Can a product be too inventive to achieve product market fit?
Absolutely, absolutely. You can be ahead of the market.
What way?
Well, years ago we did a project called Squattle, and it's short for squashable bottle, and phenomenally inventive. It was a way of evacuating the headspace. Headspace is the gap when a bottle is full. It's got no headspace. If it's slightly empty,
Oh,
it's got
yes.
headspace in between a bottle with the fluid in the bottom and the cap. So it was a way of automatically evacuating the headspace from a bottle, and it was just so far ahead of its time. No one it took so much education to educate the market of why you would want to do that. It was an
Yes,
amazing
that's always
project.
a red flag.
Yeah, the project didn't make it to market. It was mainly, as I said, it just wasn't backed by industry, whereas it really should have been. But what happened was the inventor took the concept to Worldpack and spoke about it, and just just talking about how the headspace does make the difference changed the whole industry in packaging. So at this point, that was 20 years ago. At this point, we've saved 3.7 billion kilograms of plastic because packaging is now bottles of plastic are smaller because they've taken the headspace out, so
Hmm.
8% less height in a bottle, and trillions of liters of waste because we've improved the head shelf life of liquid perishables. So even though the project
Okay.
wasn't
So,
successful, now if it was presented, everyone understands because the market's accepted that headspace is reducing headspace
uh,
increases the shelf life, and it's important. Now, if we went to market, it would be successful, but that's water under the bridge now, unfortunately.
it's one of the learnings for our viewers, Scott, is to actually understand that there's enough pain out there in the market that those experiencing that pain will actually move and adopt your innovative idea. But
Yeah,
without that pain,
yeah,
they've got to be educated, and that's always a red flag. Yeah. It just means that you need very deep pockets to
yeah.
do that education. Scott, thank you for sharing your insights with our viewers. It's been a very interesting and insightful discussion. If you have enjoyed this episode and want to keep learning from the people shaping the future of innovation, make sure you subscribe to That Product Market Fit Guy on YouTube and follow me on LinkedIn for upcoming episodes. And I'd love to hear from you. What do you think is the hardest part of turning an idea into a real manufacturable product? Drop your thoughts and experiences in the comments right down here below. Your insight could spark the next great invention. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode. Ciao for now.